Greetings comrades, and welcome to Khador Battlebox Primer. I'm Chaos Mike, and this is my Khador Battle Box. In this video, we'll discuss the strengths and the weaknesses of the individual models, the synergies between them, and the win condition for Sorsha and your battle box. The Khador Battle Box consists of Sorsha, the commander who is rather quick, speedy, nice assassin. We also have the Juggernaut. This is the large beat stick that most faction battle boxes get. It's slow but very strong. And this, of course, is the Destroyer. It's the only ranged warjack in the Khador battle box, but it is of course a Khador warjack, so obviously very tough. One thing you will note is that unlike the other faction Warmachine battle boxes, there are no light jacks. Furthermore, there are no arc nodes. This is because Khador considers both light jacks and the arc nodes to be for sissy men, like the Signarans, or the Crixians, God forbid. So, we don't mess around with any of that. We have heavy armor and very large axes. So, let's talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the Khador battle box. First up, we have Sorsha. Sorsha's strengths, if you will take a look at her stat card, are speed, first off. She's speed 6, which is normal for most infantry, but there are some casters out there who will struggle to keep up with her. So, she's good in that regards. High defense, of course. Defense 16 is not to be sneezed at. She's got an average focus of 6, but again, with certain warcasters, and especially warlocks for the Hordes starter sets, coming in at 5 focus or fury, that can be pretty good to have 6 to play around with. And of course, she's got an incredibly potent feat. As you can see, her feat freezes everybody in her control area in line of sight. Essentially, that means anyone she can see within 12 inches of her becomes an ice cube, and it's very hard to defend yourself when you are an ice cube. Now, this also combines with spells to make her especially speedy with her ability Windrush, and have especially high defense, once again, thanks to Windrush. Now, we'll talk more on how to use those together later in your victory condition, but for now, what you need to know for her strength is that Sorsha is very fast and very hard to hit. Now, as for weaknesses, she may be fast and she may be hard to hit, but when things do connect with her, it hurts. Her armor is not that high. Clocking in at only 14, most of the things in the game have higher armor than her, at least as far as warcasters and warjacks go. Now, she can be countered by certain effects, especially effects that ignore cold damage or refuse to be frozen by her feet. That's not very common in battle box games, but once you get into higher levels of play, you start seeing things like that much more often. Another problem with Sorsha is that she does very little to support her army. As I've said, her spells are very focused on making her fast, powerful, and able to get where she needs to go, but they don't do quite so much for her warjacks. So, her warjacks may be good, but for the most part, they're on their own. She's also, finally, very susceptible to knockdowns, stationary, or any other effects that will lower her defense. As I've said, her defense is her lifeblood. If she loses that and she has to rely on her armor, she's going to have a bad day. So, do what you can to keep from getting knocked down by Striker's Earthquake or getting slammed by a warjack. Up next, we have the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is the premier beat stick for the Khador battle box. He's not very fast, but he does have ridiculously high armor, clocking in at armor 20, and he also has huge damage. His axe right there not only hits at power 19, but also can freeze you on a critical. So if that axe connects with anything, basically anything on the field, it's going to cause some major damage. And it can kill most things short of other Khador heavies in about 1 round of focus-driven beating. He's also got an open fist and very high strength, as all Khador heavies do, so he can throw pretty much with the best of them. It's not going to be double-handed, but still, if you get the chance to, try chucking a warjack into an enemy caster. The results are hilarious. Now, his weaknesses, as I mentioned, are his speed, which is pretty low. 4 is, I think, the lowest warjack speed in the game, and his defense suffers accordingly. Khador warjacks are defense 10. Now, if you've played any of your games with Warmachine, and you should have by now, you'll know that defense 10 will not protect you from a whole lot. Most warriors have a rat or mat of about 5 or 6, and it's really easy to roll that 5 or 6 to get a hit on a Khador warjack. Their survivability lies in their armor, not their defense. Keep that in mind. And of course, this may seem obvious, but it does limit him somewhat. He does not have any ranged ability. The closest you can get is using your opponent's models as projectiles via throwing them with his open fist. Finally, we have the Destroyer. Now the Destroyer has the same very high armor as the Juggernaut. He also has fairly good melee capability, not quite as powerful as the 19 of the Juggernaut's Ice Axe, but still, power 17 when backed up by the charging of a heavy warjack, that's going to put a dent in most things. And of course, he has an excellent gun. The Bombard on the Destroyer not only has a high range, but a great POW coming in at 14, an AoE, small, but still, it's an AoE, and also Arcing Fire. Arcing Fire is wonderful. It lets you shoot your shells over opposing models to hit models beyond. What this means in effect is that screening models can usually be ignored as long as the model you're shooting is not too close to the screening model. This will come up later in the synergies between Sorsha and her Destroyer. Now, the problems with the Destroyer are very similar to the problems with the Juggernaut. He has, once again, low defense of 10, very slow speed of 4, but there's one problem that really stands out. He has an incredibly low RAT, or ranged attack. It's only a 4. The Guardsmen, the most conscripted troops of Khador, have a RAT of at least 5. How Khador can't train their gun-wielding warjacks to actually shoot things? No, we're not really sure, but the point is, he has trouble hitting things unless he's aiming or has a boosted attack. So, for the most part, boost your Destroyer's attacks. He's going to need them. Finally, he only has the one melee weapon. While he can hit pretty hard, again, POW 17 does hurt. He's only got one of it, and it doesn't really compare to the power of the Juggernaut's Ice Axe or the hitting power of most of the other heavies in the battle boxes. So, if you can, try and keep him out of combat unless his target is already damaged. Now that we've covered some of the strengths and weaknesses, let's talk about a few of the synergies that the Khador battle box can pull off on the battlefield. Consider the following scenario. The Legion Overweight player, at the end of turn 2, moved his Carnivian forward and blasted your Juggernaut with his Blight Breath. Put a bit of a nasty hurt on there, and pretty much guaranteed that the thing was 9 inches away. Since the Carnivian has a speed of 6, and Pathfinder, that pretty much guarantees that the Carnivian is going to charge your Juggernaut next turn. Plus, the fact that there's a wall in the way, and your Juggernaut's paltry speed of 4, leads me to think that with the speed of 7, he's not going to reach the Carnivian, even if he could charge over that wall. However, we have a bit of a trick up our sleeve. Take Sorsha, move her around a little bit to stay away from that Carnivian, and throw Boundless Charge on your Juggernaut. Not only does the Juggernaut get to charge for free now, saving some of his precious focus for buying attacks, but he also gets 2 inches of movement and Pathfinder, letting him leap that wall rather nimbly and punch that Carnivian straight in the face. Pretty soon, there'll be a dead Carnivian on the board, and Lilith is going to have some issues taking down any of these Khador heavies. Overall, a pretty desirable result. This also works on the Destroyer, but since the Juggernaut hits much harder, that's the one you're going to be wanting to have Boundless Charge, more or less 9 times out of 10. Another synergy between the Warjacks this time is what I like to call baiting and screening. Once again, you can see that Legion, with their superior movement and threat range, has positioned themselves so they're probably going to get the first jump on us. For example, that Carnivian in the woods, yeah, that's going to be hard to dig out. He's really hard to hit in there, plus he's got Pathfinder, and unless we have Boundless Charge, we don't. So, let's try sending the Destroyer up front and make use of our very heavy armor. In this case, I've known that the Carnivian is going to charge me, so in effect, I let it happen, and I trust my armor to take it forward with me. As you can see, the Destroyer is in quite a bit of trouble. The Carnivian is very likely going to either very heavily damage him this turn, or kill him. But honestly, it doesn't really matter, because now he set himself up for a rather nice charge from the Juggernaut. Once that Carnivian goes down, as I've said, it really doesn't matter what Lilith wants to do. She's only got 4 Shredders here, and they are not about to take out a heavy Khador Warjack. You've just tipped the balance in your favor. Alright, so now that we've played a few more games, we have a game where the battle lines have become entangled, one of the Shredders has died, our Juggernaut has gotten kind of mauled by Carnivian, and our Destroyer is being harassed, I suppose, by a couple of shredders. However, we've made our move. Sorsha has wind rushed and charged forward, frozen most of the people in her area, and started wailing on Lilith. However, it wasn't quite enough. Lilith is still sitting there with about 6 damage points, and Sorsha, as you can see, is out of focus. Normally, this would mean we're about to have a dead Warcaster for Khador, but we have not activated the Destroyer yet. Now that this guy is frozen, he can pretty much walk out of combat with the 2 frozen shredders and nail him with his gun. As I've said, one of the weaknesses of the Destroyer is his very low rat. But, as I also said, it's very hard to defend yourself when you're an ice cube. So, take that gun, pop her right in the face. POW 14 versus Lilith's Armor 14 means 2d6 damage straight. That's 7 damage on average, and that will very likely kill her. There are not many things in the game that can stand up to Sorsha charging her, and then the Destroyer nailing him in the face. It's one of the most tried and true ways for Sorsha and the Destroyer to win the game. One of the final synergies that I've seen used a couple of times involves using your Juggernaut's open fist to get the assassination. Now, as we'll discuss, usually freezing is the most reliable way for Sorsha to get the assassination, but sometimes you just have to use your feet for something else, or, in some cases, they can't be frozen. So, take your Juggernaut, give him 2 focus. Hop him over the wall, or whatever's in the way, and find something to throw, in this case the Carnivian. Spend 1 focus to get the power attack throw, and another focus to boost, just to make sure. Roll your 3 dice, score your hit, and thanks to your high strength, you have a pretty good chance of tossing this Carnivian straight into her Warcaster. Also, you can throw him much farther. Once you do this, both the Warlock in this case, and the Carnivian are knocked down. At that point, Sorsha can wind rush herself forward, charge right into Lilith, and spend as much focus as she wants to carve that Warlock up. Once again, victory for Khador. Now then, let's talk about win condition. Win condition for Sorsha is pretty simple. She's not a very subtle caster, at least not in theory. Her feat, her spells, and the warjack you get in the battle group more or less lend themselves to assassination every single time. Pulling that assassination off, that can be the real art of playing Sorsha. For the most part, you're going to want to freeze their caster and charge them, but sometimes you can also shoot and spell them into submission, or occasionally, if you're really lucky, get a Juggernaut to do the dirty work for you. But again, for the most part, the assassination run is going to rely on moving Sorsha up, freezing your opponent, and then carving them into an ice swan. Let's see how we can do this. In this scenario, Legion seems to have the upper hand. The Carnivian has charged in and destroyed our Juggernaut. The Shredders have swarmed the Destroyer, and Lilith, behind her screen of war beasts, looks in prime position to take out Sorsha next turn, no matter what she does. But, once again, Sorsha can be pretty tricky. So, starting on our feat turn, load Sorsha with focus, giving none to her warjacks, and start things off with a well-placed wind rush. In this case, we have a couple options. Since we can't go right through our Destroyer and all these Shredders, we can either go left, or we can go right. 6 inches is quite a bit of movement for a spell, so keep in mind where you can go. Now, this is obviously the easiest attack route. There's nothing in the way, and we can charge right through here. But, let's say there's something preventing us from charging through, and we have to go this way. We move the 6 inches for the wind rush, and now we have a bit of an issue. The Shredder here, or the Carnivian, is likely to get a free strike on Sorsha when she comes through and charges Lilith. That's not desirable. Her armor really isn't that good, and the Shredder does have enough ability to hit her, even with the wind rush up, that you don't want to risk it, especially with the boosted attack roll from a free strike. Instead, we'll pop our feet. Boom, 12 inches, and everybody that she can see is frozen. Now that Shredder is just a little lump of ice that she can pat merrily on the head as she runs by into the Warlock. So, with her 9-inch charge and reach, she can hit a target 11 inches away. That's quite a charge distance. And with 4 focus on her, and a frozen Warlock who's already being auto-hit in close combat, Lilith is not going to survive long, even if she has a couple of Fury on her for transfers. So, an easy way to do things. Now, alternatively, you could think, well, maybe the Lilith player is being a little more cautious, and has her Warlock a little farther back. Not a problem. burn those 2 focus, cast Boundless Charge on yourself, and you've got 2 more inches of movement to play with. Not to mention Pathfinder, should they find a way to get a wall or some other piece of difficult terrain in the way. It will only leave you with 2 focus left to make extra attacks, so make sure that the opposing Warlock or Warcaster doesn't have an excess of focus or fury to prevent you from killing them. However, if they're leaving their Warlock or Caster that far back, chances are they think they're pretty safe. Windrush in, freeze them, and show them otherwise. So there you have it, fellow Khador players. The strengths, weaknesses, synergies, and win conditions for the Khador Battle Box. Once again, let's try to go over it all and bring it all together. Your Warjacks are very strong and hit very hard. Their main purpose is clearing holes for Sorsha to make her assassination run. Using the Boundless Charge to make opportunities and remove heavy threats early, then following up with the cannon from the Destroyer and the charge and freeze from Sorsha can usually net you victory. I've actually won several tournaments using Sorsha and this battle box with a couple of key troops, and it's a very potent combination, one that many players will struggle to both get down at first and block against. With Sorsha's spell Windrush, and with her freeze, along with Boundless Charge on her, there are several angles of attack that you can usually find. Also, don't forget that Sorsha has reach. This does allow her to use some unconventional charge lanes, as she has to just get within melee range. That's all. As long as you can get her within 2 inches of the Warcaster, it doesn't matter if she has to charge around something, or say, through an area that would normally free strike you. Because remember, as long as they're frozen, they don't get free strikes. So keep your army working together, freeze your opponent's Warcaster, and get Sorsha in there for the charge. Remember, she can get 19 inches across the board on a straight line with a perfect charge range. Once you've done that, even if you don't kill them, drop a couple bombs on them with a bombard. Once they're frozen, they're easy prey. And that's it. Good luck, comrades, and may you bring victory to Khador.